Hey guys, it's Nathan from Modern Rifleman, and it is that time again. Yes, another suppressor review. Finally! I know you guys have been waiting on more content for a little while now, and I apologize. Frankly, the weather here in Ohio has sucked. It's been way too cold to get out. We're talking about a lot of single-digit stuff. I know some of my viewers in Minnesota and the northern states are laughing at me right now. I've heard the hate on Instagram. I get it. But it's just been way too cold to get out there. It's finally starting to warm up. Travel for the holidays is kind of coming to an end. SHOT Show is over now, and I finally had a chance to make it out to the range with this brand new Optimus Micro from Griffin Armament. Before I get into telling you guys why this can is so special and why it is officially, as of this moment, so mark it on your calendar, we're talking end of January 2018, my favorite 22 can. That could change, it always does, but it is my favorite 22 can at the moment. But before we do that, let's take a moment. I want to thank Silencer Shop for sending this over to us. They are major supporters of the website and the channel, and without their help, I would not be able to bring you guys this kind of content. So why is this my new favorite? Why is this can the most versatile 22 suppressor I have tried to date? Well, let's talk about a little bit about the construction. It is a fully 17.4 stainless steel suppressor. Even as far as 22 cans go, that's not exactly unique. If you remember, we've reviewed the Oculus 22 from Rugged Suppressors here. It's 17.4 stainless throughout. And we've reviewed twice, actually, the Bowers USS 22, another fully stainless design. But whereas those cans are only rated for 5.7 usage, full auto 5.7 mind you, this suppressor is rated for 5.56. Yes, that's right. You can put the Optimus Micro on your AR, and I'm not talking about conversion kits. I'm not talking about a 22 conversion kit. I am talking about full-on 5.56 usage out of your AR. There are some limitations to that, which we'll get into in a moment, but 90% of you guys are going to be able to use this can on your AR-15. So what makes this special compared to those others? Why does this stainless steel suppressor, which looks like a normal 22 can, able to handle that kind of beating, whereas the others can't? Well, it's not so much that the others can't. I know a number of manufacturers have tested their cans with 5.56, but they certainly aren't rating them for that kind of abuse. Griffin is the first that I know of that has stepped into that. And the reason they're able to do that is, one, they actually call this a 1.1 inch outer diameter suppressor. So it is a little bit thicker or a little bit wider than your average 22 can, which usually hover around that 1 inch mark, although there are some that are a little bit over 1 inch. This is a 1.1 inch officially can. The reason I kind of bring out the air quotes there, though, is at the threads on both ends, it actually measures out to a little over 1.2 inches in diameter. That's important because when you go to cut the threads, and even into that 17.4 stainless, you're thinning out that wall. And when you thin out that wall, you start to reduce the kind of pressure that the tube can withstand. So you've got a rather generous wall thickness throughout here with the Optimus Micro. So even if you took like a standard 1 inch 17.4 suppressor and decided that you wanted to use it on a 5.56 gun, you probably, I certainly wouldn't be comfortable doing that. This can has been beefed up in the right areas to handle that. Now, I mentioned some limitations. Really, the limitations are barrel length. You're not going to be able to use this suppressor on your 10.5 inch or most certainly not your 7.5 inch barrels. It is rated down to a 12.5 inch barrel or a 14.5 inch barrel depending on the mount setup. As it is pictured here, you can see it has the 1/2 by 28 threaded insert. In this setup, you're limited to that 14.5 inch barrel. Now if I can get this off without too much difficulty, it's probably not going to play ball. We'll show it to you in a moment. But if you add this little piece here, the taper mount adapter, you can take it down to 12.5 inch barrels. This taper mount adapter is compatible with any of Griffin's taper mounts. The full length ones, the minimalist ones, any of them. You can use them with your Optimus Micro simply by replacing this thread insert and screwing that in. And you can see it has a taper surface at the front as well to help keep it attached to the can. It's not going anywhere. I'll show you a little bit more about that, the mounting options and how those all work when we go over to the mat and disassemble the can in a moment. But the one last thing I want to point out before we do that is, in addition to being able to, handle the pressure of the 5.56 round, it's actually hearing safe on those as well. So when you're watching the videos, pay attention to that, basically how it sounds, and note that I'm not wearing any additional hearing protection. So without further ado, let's head on over to the mat, take it apart, take a look at those baffles and some of the mounting options that you have with the Optimus Micro. Alright, so welcome to the super official Modern Rifleman mat, otherwise known as some spare sheetrock. Here, once again, is the Optimus Micro. We're going to go ahead and take it apart before we talk about some of the dimensional options and weights and all that stuff, because it is so configurable that weights, lengths, stuff like that really depends on how you've got it configured. Let's go ahead and take it apart though. First thing you'll want to do is unscrew the thread mount. I already went ahead and pre-loosened it, but if for some reason it proves difficult, you should be able to just use, I believe it's a 19mm wrench to loosen that up. Go ahead and set that back here. Go ahead and set it up there actually. Once you remove that, you can't actually drop the baffles through that portion of the can. They're not going to fall through the rear. You have to go ahead and remove the front cap, which, if you notice, has some slots cut into it. They work very well with standard issue quarter for loosening. It's a nice feature. Doesn't require a special tool. I mean, why would you need such a thing when a quarter works just fine? So go ahead and set that down. We'll go ahead and continue to loosen. Oops. Alright, so with the front cap removed, you're still not quite done. If you look here, you'll notice there's a retaining cap there. That's important. It seems like a small addition, but it is actually very important to the design of the Optimus Micro. It's similar to what you'd find on the Optimus 9 or the 30 caliber Optimus, the OG Optimus, I guess you could call it. And what it's responsible, it is primarily responsible for retaining the baffles, not the front cap. Though the front cap threads into it and adds a little bit of additional security. This ring right here is one of, not the only, but one of the reasons why the Optimus Micro is rated for 5.56 usage. It keeps things very secure. So again, with the quarter, we'll go ahead and unscrew it real quick. Takes a little bit longer because you got to get through all those threads. Alright, come on. Boom. And you can see, I mean, it's a pretty substantial ring you've got there that keeps everything nice and together. Go ahead and set it next to everything. And now, with that off, you can just dump the baffles. I have not disassembled this suppressor since I took it to the range, so everything's going to be kind of dirty. Fortunately, I've already gotten the mat dirty here, so I don't care too much. Alright, let's set the tube back here and out of the way. And we'll talk about the baffles. Now, as I mentioned in the opening, everything about this suppressor is 17.4 stainless steel. The baffles, the tube, the mounts, everything. So, go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and take apart the baffles. So what that means is that if you get them very dirty, and though they look ugly here, they are not nearly what I would consider dirty by 22 standards. Got a little bit of copper there. They're looking a little bit rough, but there's no wear on these things, and really no buildup. They're in great shape, and they, frankly, they should be. They are entirely 17.4. Now, as you notice, the baffles stack up nicely when going into and out of the suppressor. That is because they have little timing notches cut into them, as you can see right there. That just helps to keep everything aligned. They do not interlock, so it is different than the Oculus 22 from rugged suppressors in that regard, but I almost prefer it. Now, I have found that, and you'll probably see me struggle with it once I go ahead to reassemble this suppressor. I've found that reassembly can be a bit challenging because they want to wiggle as you try and drop the tube over them. Another thing to notice is that they look identical to the baffles in the full-size Optimus, and they also look the same as the baffles in the Alpha/the Paladin. This is Griffin's new design. As I mentioned, it is low back pressure, and it's a very durable design that works quite well. I'm very pleased with this. Alright, so now that we've got everything apart, let's talk about putting it all back together. It's really quite simple. All you'll need to do is take one baffle and stack it on top of the next, making sure to line up those little grooves, holes, slots, whatever you want to call them. And as you can see, it does take a steady hand because they do not interlock, and so if you don't set the top, the next one on top of the previous one cleanly, you're going to shift the entire stack. It's a design that I don't necessarily love. I wish that they did interlock to some degree, but at the same time, when I tested that Oculus 22, I had a bear getting it apart. Breaking those baffles apart, breaking the click-together baffles apart is no big deal when they've got like a 45mm bore like my Octane 45. Sorry, I'm struggling a little bit here to keep everything lined up nicely. But when you've got a 45 can, it's easy to stick like a screwdriver or whatever you might have, a dowel, cleaning rod, whatever, and pop those things loose. You just got to stick it in the bore and remove them. When I was doing that Oculus, it was not quite so friendly. Ended up marring up a couple of them trying to get them apart. Alright, so now you've got the baffles stacked up. All you've got to do, and this is easier said than done sometimes, is drop the can directly on top of them. And you'll notice I'm getting shifting here. So, regrip a little bit. And just keep everything nicely aligned. Drop the can straight down on top of them. And boom. Wow. Fairly drama-free until I get to that and it doesn't want to go in. Alright, so I think we've got everything in place now. You see you've got plenty of thread depth there. If you don't have them seated correctly, you can always twist them. But since I'm twisting the top one, and that's causing the blast baffle to twist as well, I think we've got everything perfectly aligned. So now what we have to do is take these, whoops, that's the end cap, take the retaining ring, twist it back in as far as we can get it with our fingers, and then we'll have to go to the quarter again. And frankly guys, that was about as easy as it's been for me as far as getting those baffles back in. It's probably something that as you use the can, get used to it, find the sweet spots, what have you, it'll probably get easier. I haven't owned my Alpha for all that long, so I haven't mastered the art quite yet. Twist the front cap back on. And we are done. Everything is nice and tight, no jiggling, no nothing. Alright, so I'm not going to put the thread mount back on quite yet because I do want to talk about size, weight, and all that fun. So for that I'm going to move the can out of the way a little bit and roll in the different mounts. Obviously we have the half 28 thread, which most of you will be using for your 22 applications. We have the taper mount adapter, which I'm going to go ahead and set down outside. That'll be probably the main ticket for the 5.56 use that this can sees. And we also have the 3-lug assembly, which, yes, that might look familiar to some of you. That is the same 3-lug assembly that the Revolution cans use. Same thing, I own one, I have it hooked up to my Octane 45, and they both work perfectly fine. And then, rounding things out, we've got a couple mounts. We've got the taper mount, minimalist taper mount brake over here. This is actually the 7.62 version, but it's the same mount. And then this is one of Griffin's 3-lug adapters, which are really nice to have, work very, very well, and thread onto any half 28 barrel. Alright, so now we've got everything laid out here. Let's talk a little bit about the different configurations. Obviously you first saw it like this with that thread mount. In this configuration, the can weighs 9.3 ounces. Okay, so alone the tube with the suppressor, or with the baffles in it, is 8.1. You add the thread mount, that's another 1.2 ounces, so 9.3 ounces. It is 5 3/8 inches long in this configuration, so fairly short, but certainly it is somewhat heavy for 22 purposes. Removing this and switching over to the taper adapter. Sorry about the noise, guys, that sounds terrible. Threads are dry, need to oil them a little bit. Moving it over to the taper adapter. The adapter itself weighs 2.7 ounces. The can, once again, is 8.1 ounces, so 10.8 ounces overall. So yes, it is fairly heavy. You're almost in a pure 5.56 realm in terms of weight, but you aren't quite there. So you are still saving weight if you go with this as opposed to, say, Griffin's Recce 5 or the Alpha or something like that. The length in this configuration is 6 11/16 inches. So almost 6 3/4 inches long. So it's pretty short. It's actually the exact same length as Griffin's Recce 5. So you've got that the length of the 5.56 can with just a little bit less diameter. As I think I mentioned, but I may not have, it's worth noting that the taper adapter has a slight, there you go, has a taper of its own at the front. That's important because, and this is going to be extremely difficult for you guys to see, but there is a taper inside. I guess, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there's a taper, or at least a ridge inside the can that snugs up against. And what that means is this is a very, very snug configuration. I've actually, after I put a few rounds through it, I found I had to use a tool to get it off. I had to use a wrench in order to get it off because it actually seemed to tighten itself through usage. Or maybe I just really, really snugged it down. Who knows what the truth is there, but certainly it works very well. It's not going to come apart during usage, and I know I had somebody on Instagram that said that they thought it would. No, that's not accurate. Let's go ahead and take that apart. And finally, the 3-lug adapter. This is actually a pretty cool setup. One, because when you've got it this way, it's only 5.5 inches long. That taper mount, or sorry, that 3-lug adapter adds almost no length to the can. I mean, it's very, very small. In this configuration, it does weigh even a little bit more than the taper adapter. 2.8 for the 3-lug adapter. Add that to the 8.1 of the can by itself, and you're looking at a 10.9 ounce suppressor. So definitely, you're getting up there in weight. That's also not counting the 3-lug adapter here, the mount itself, which is quite light at 7/10 of an ounce, and the same could be said for the taper mount adapter. This mount here, this minimalist mount, is 1.8 ounces overall. So certainly not the lightest can. In fact, it might be the heaviest 22 suppressor, but I think, and you'll see this in a moment, the performance really does sort of outweigh the weight, the size, whatever. I almost didn't even notice it. For size reference, before we go, I'm going to roll in, going to get this stuff out of the way. Go ahead and roll in the PPKS 22. And you can see that, like a lot of the 22 suppressors that we've looked at here, it's about the same length as the slide of the gun. That seems to be kind of standard. One thing I do think, right before we wrap up here, one final thought that I forgot to share with you guys in the beginning is that because this is a 1.21 inch diameter suppressor, it is going to block pistol sights in some situations. That is the case for the PPKS. I cannot see over the top of the can with the standard sights. It's not a big deal. It's easy enough to shoot through the can, as they say, or to sight through the can, but you know, something to consider. With most standard 22 suppressors, that is not an issue. We're talking about the 1-inch diameter ones that are out there. Alright, so let's go on over and check out that shooting footage, and then we will come back for final thoughts. Alright, so now that you guys have had a chance to view the footage of the Optimus Micro on 22 hosts like this Walther PPKS 22 and my SIG 522, I hope you have a better feel for just how awesome it sounds with standard 22 long rifle loadings. I mean, it's certainly one of the quietest 22 cans on the market, and frankly, it should be. It's rather heavy as far as the 22 competition is concerned. But it also does have a proven baffle design. M baffles work just as well for 22 as they do for higher pressure rounds like the 5.56. Speaking of the 5.56, I mounted this can, as you saw, on my M16A4 clone. It has a 20-inch barrel, and it was hearing safe. I'm not kidding you guys. It was a hearing safe suppressor on that rifle. You'll notice in the video I did not have any earmuffs on. I didn't have any earplugs or any kind of hearing protection like that. The can was my hearing protection, and I was not trying to be a hard ass. This was just simply a hearing safe suppressor. Now you'll note I did have it mounted with the additional taper mount. but I also tested it with the thread mount, and the performance was more or less the same. And you're probably talking about 1 or 2 decibels at that, maybe 3, but it was just barely discernible by my ears at least. So when I first mounted this can to that rifle, though, I'll be honest with you, I really did expect a much weaker showing. I first loaded 5 rounds, and I expected that I'd be reaching for the muffs very quickly. But I fired those 5 rounds, and nothing. And then I fired another 10 rounds, and still no ringing. And at that point, I was pretty well sold that the Optimus Micro is, in fact, as advertised, a hearing-safe 5.56 can on anything above a 16-inch barrel. This is according to what I've heard from Griffin. Haven't tested that myself, but I have tested it on the 20-inch barrel, and I can vouch for it. Now, I wouldn't use it that way all day. Certainly, if you're going to be doing magazine dumps, or firing through a lot, using a lot of ammo, I wouldn't. You're right at that threshold, right, guys? So you're looking at a can that's close to that 140 decibel hearing safe level for impact noises. So if you start to pile on round after round after round, yes, you might start to do some hearing damage. But for those of you guys who are looking for something to put on your on your 223 hunting rifles, like a bolt gun or something, the Optimus Micro might be your ticket. It's lighter than most 5.56 cans, but puts up performance that, as I kind of mentioned in the teardown, is roughly 80% of a flagship 5.56 suppressor. So really, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. And because of that, I will probably be buying one for myself very soon. Now, if you're wondering where you can get the Optimus Micro, head on over to Silencer Shop. They've got it for around $475 right now, but that's going to depend on your dealer's pricing. Powered by Silencer Shop dealers have the ability to set their own pricing, and at least in my area, it's going for around $475. You'll see some fluctuation there, though. So be sure to shop around on the site and see if you can find someone that's got a solid price. But really, guys, this is a remarkably priced, remarkably designed 22 can, and I think it's well worth the money. So if you guys have any questions, post those in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to like it. Subscribe to the channel. We've got more suppressor content on the way, and be sure to head on over to the site for the full written review, where we'll really dig into the details of this can. All of that will be in the description, so be sure to take a look. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.